This is my heater. I dare you to hit it.
He'll be sorry.
You want the heater? I'll give it to you.
Basketball, maybe they don't hit it.
A swing and a drive to deep right.
Clear the deck. Cannonball coming.
Left field. It is out of here.
What up? What's good? We're back. Baseball Unstitched here to talk about ball from last week. And, oh, Lord, a lot happening right now, my friend. Flax, as always, how was the weekend?
Weekend was good. We did not have baseball this weekend because of the holiday.
Oh,
which
wait, the
stinks.
holiday's great.
But we did play golf. We got to play golf. Golf was very good to us. We had a good time. And other than that, man, week was good. Didn't have work on Monday. So thank you. Shout out all of our service members out there fighting for our country, for us to have these freedoms. We enjoy it. We appreciate it. So happy Memorial Day, retroactive for anybody listening to this throughout the week.
Absolutely. Happy Memorial Day. We hope you guys enjoyed, got to spend some time with your families as always. Let's open it up here, and I'll start on our opening thoughts. Now, today we are going to be getting into a couple different things. One, we're going to give you an update about what happened around the league last week, some things that we wanted to point out. A lot of you guys have been talking about a Paul Skenes trade. Yeah, we'll talk about that too, I guess. And then finally, we're going to talk about a couple minor league guys who are pounding down the door, trying to get to the major league level, and whether or not those teams should or should not bring these guys up and how they might fit into the lineup. But first and foremost, Flax, I don't know if you saw it, but O'Neal Cruz hit a ball 123 miles an hour.
Yeah, that's not really a fathomable number. I tweeted about it. The joke went over some people's heads. That's okay. It happens.
Just like the ball did.
That is Twitter. Yeah, I made a comment. I think my comment was they're going to have to start putting the netting all the way around the field if guys start hitting the ball that way. And I think my two favorite were someone said, well, it went over everyone's head, which reasonable. The other one was, well, they only get the data from 60 feet off the bat. So by the time it got to the people in the outfield, it wouldn't be as hard. Do you know that an 80-mile-an-hour ball could also kill somebody? Like, he hit a ball 123 miles an hour. It's dangerous. I don't know what to tell you. Yeah, absurd.
You listen, it's another guy who we knew he was going to come into his offensive self at some point in time, and the level of consistency is what we needed to see. He hit another home run after this one. He is, something else.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, Jackson, our stats guy, is a big O'Neal Cruz truther, as we like to say.
Yes.
And he was quite happy to see this ball go out. The swing was beautiful, the way the ball came out of the bat. I truly don't think I've seen a ball get out of the picture while watching TV that quick. Like it was out.
They couldn't follow. I don't think the cameraman could really follow it into the outfield seats. It was wild.
You're not supposed to be able to hit the ball that far. What I equate it to is the first time, ironically, against the Pirates when we watched Aroldis Chapman throw 105.7. That's what that swing and the way the ball left is just like watching that number pop up for Chapman. I mean, it feels 15 years ago now.
Yeah, I think it was 15 years ago.
The point being is when it happened, you just looked at that number and go, that's not real. Same thing here. I mean, it was just unbelievable.
Something about that NL Central.
Something about it, that's for sure. Flax, what are we opening up on for you today?
Well, for those of you who are into college baseball, obviously the regionals are about to start this weekend. If you really are a sicko like me, the D3 College World Series is also starting this weekend. And my former team, the Denison Big Red, are playing for their first ever College World Series title. I will be there at least Friday, Saturday. I think it goes Friday to Friday. The schedule is wild to me when I looked at it earlier today. But we're very pumped about the Big Red. And then also ETSU wins the SoCon tournament, wins the regular season, absolutely swept through the SoCon tournament. They are headed to the Nashville Regional as a 3 seed. If you guys don't know, Jackson works for ETSU baseball. We are big ETSU baseball guys through Jackson, and we are pumped for them.
Absolutely.
So it is a big week for baseball, at least within the college game. Always a big week for baseball within the MLB. But those are my opening thoughts.
Love it. It's going to be really exciting. We're starting to talk here sooner than later about the draft. It is coming up. It is rapidly approaching. Once these tournaments end, that'll be a focal point of things we talk about to come. But some great baseball is going to happen across the NCAA, and we highly recommend you guys take a look if time permits. Let's pop into this week's update in baseball. Flax, run us through what's going down.
Yeah, and we wanted to do a little baseball update like we did in the offseason with the transaction update. I think it's nice to give you guys just kind of a whole well-rounded picture if you're coming from being a fan of just your team. So quick rundown of the standings. Got to start with the AL Central. The AL Central, if we were to step into the playoffs right now, would have 3 teams once again. And for all those that think that the AL Central is not a good division and they want to do the White Sox conversation, get out of here. We're not those guys for you. They lay host to the best team in baseball in the Detroit Tigers. Very young, very fun. But the Guardians and the Twins are holding their own. The Twins went through a really hot stretch and got themselves back into it. The AL West is fascinating, to say the least. Houston just took 3 of 4 from Seattle, but Seattle still holds a couple-game lead. And the AL East is unfortunately turning into the AL least at this moment. The Orioles look like they're starting to vibe a little bit, but we'll see. There's a lot of work for them to do. The Yankees are certainly finding some stride, as we expected they would on the offensive front. Aaron Judge is a monster.
Yeah, coming to Colorado doesn't hurt that, right?
That's generally the spot that most teams start to pick things up. Either there or Boston, and I don't say that as far as the Red Sox. I just say it as far as ballpark. It's a hitter's ballpark. Teams tend to have, some happiness there, especially if you're a right-handed heavy lineup. It's usually a shootout when games do happen there, although the Red Sox offense doesn't seem to want to play those types of games right now. So on the NL side, as we expected, it's going to be a whole lot harder to get into the postseason. Yeah. A lot of 30-plus win teams already over there. Divisionally, the NL West is just as good as we thought they were going to be. The only difference is we thought Arizona was going to be a little bit higher on the list than the Giants, and the Giants are just continuing to play really good baseball. They're only a game and a half back of the Dodgers. The Dodgers, when they're playing poorly, are still one of the best teams in baseball. They're just so deep. Ohtani went deep to lead off the game back-to-back days.
Yep.
They are a different beast. The NL Central is fascinating. The Cardinals are being the Cardinals. We talked about this all offseason, right? They are not a team who does a rebuild. They are a team who does a retool. It's a matter of finding your core and building around it. They don't hang on for very long before they say, new core, let's find the right guys, let's get them moving. Mason Wynn's been playing extremely well for them at shortstop, bringing some more power. Arenado's being Arenado as we expected. And their pitching staff's been lights out comparatively to last year. So that's been fun. The Cubs might have one of the most elite offenses in baseball. I think that is a division that obviously, as we talked about it earlier in the year, but realistically across the board, that's a division that's going to be fun to watch as the season continues to go on. And then lastly, the NL East, which is not the NL least. The Mets, Phillies at the top of it are going to battle it out. The Braves are still trying to find their stride, hanging around 500. I would not be shocked to see that offense go on an absolute spree here coming up in the next couple of months and start to turn on the Jets. It's too good of an offense not to. And as soon as Strider starts to get more consistent starts, Chris Sale's coming into his own, Schwellenbach's still been extremely good, Smith-Shawver's been extremely good. They have all the pieces to turn around and go win, 12 and a 15-game stretch and put themselves right back in the mix pretty quickly. So that's a good bit of an update. The Phillies at one point last week were winners of 9 in a row. Nick Kurtz on the A's last week, 4 home runs in 5 games. And to top it all off, Tarek Skubal cementing himself looking for back-to-back Cy Youngs. I don't even know if we can call it a Maddox because nobody has ever done what he did. 13 Ks, less than 100 pitches, and finishing it off with a 103-mile-an-hour fastball down and in that looked like it was I'm going to wave at this, so it looks like I'm waving at this, but I know I'm striking out type of at-bat.
I know, watching interviews and listening to how Skubal talks, that the entire baseball community gallivanting around talking about how Paul Skenes is the best pitcher on the planet did not bother him.
Yeah.
But let me tell you what, Skubal is out to show everybody, without a doubt, that he is currently the best pitcher who walks the earth. And by God, does he look like it. Everything that he throws is not only nasty, it's where he wants it. That sounds like a really stupid statement. I understand how people might take that, but let's stop and talk about this. We're not talking about a guy who's throwing 94 to 95 wherever he wants, right? Or lower 90s like we saw growing up of guys who could place a ball wherever they want. We're watching Skubal do this with stuff, and he's throwing 103 to finish the game on pitch 94 in this case.
So nasty.
Guy's unbelievable. So I'm very, very excited that we've got to see Skubal. He dealt with injuries early in his career. Did not get to show us as quickly as we would have liked what he is, but coming to his own, and it's the right time if you're a Detroit Tigers fan, because that team is rolling right now. The vibe is great. We'll see, man. That was
I don't see the
just
train
such an impressive
stopping.
start.
I don't see the train stopping anytime soon, and I say that because of the way that they are winning ball games, right? Like today, they win a game 3-1, face Hayden Birdsong, who threw fairly well against a really tough offense. Javi Baez got tossed. Like, there's just a lot of fire coming from that team. And when Javi Baez gets tossed because of a pitch that was called incorrectly on an off-speed pitch on the outer half, that's when we really got to start reevaluating some of the pitches that these umpires are calling, or we need to start reevaluating that box we put on the TV, because when Javi Baez is calling you out, we got a problem. But that team's not going anywhere.
Yeah, I don't think so either. Not to mention the fact that they have more reinforcements coming up than people probably realize. The minors of that, the minor leagues that the Tigers have put together from an organizational standpoint is very strong. They also, if I remember correctly, have Veerling, who's been on a couple different rehab starts. He's on his way back. That is a hell of a train, and I'll tell you what, it might be a good train for some people to hop on, but we'll certainly see. Let's move into the first topic of the day, and that's a conversation that we weren't even sure we wanted to have, but it seems like after 2 weeks of consistent conversation here, it's probably time for us to weigh it in some way, shape, or form. And that's, should the Pittsburgh Pirates trade Paul Skenes right now? Let's start with that statement, Flax, and I can go first for you here. There's this thing called a king's ransom. If you're not familiar with what a king's ransom is, I'd like you to go look up the Juan Soto trade that we will talk about here shortly. And I want you to recognize that that's a king's ransom. And then I want you to stop, and I want you to ask yourself how many additional years the team trading for Paul Skenes would get over the 2.5 years the Padres technically traded for Juan Soto. And ask me if even that is enough to get Paul Skenes. Then you may have your answer, but we'll go deeper into that. My answer is absolutely not, unless we get a trade package that is going to be something all of you are going to call me ludicrous for, but I'm going to be honest with you about what it would have to be.
Yeah, I think you start the conversation with asking a different question. And it's not should they, it's can they, right? For what he is worth, who in the world can even pay it?
Correct.
Who in the world would it be worth paying it?
Yep.
Right? There's only a subset of teams that would be in a position right now where if you don't think you can extend Skenes, you're taking advantage of the 4.5-year window as it exists. And we say 4.5 years because we're aligning it to this year's trade deadline. When you start looking at the small subset of teams that could utilize that 4.5-year window and are in a position to take advantage of it and not leaning on potentially taking him and, re-signing him to a longer-term deal, which more than likely they will not be able to, and he'll probably get to free agency. Or if he doesn't, what he's going to get paid is going to be very, very large, and only a small subset of teams will be willing to pay that.
Yep.
So that's why I say the question is not should they, it's can they? Is there someone who's willing to pay, and is there something they're willing to take from somebody to make it worth their while?
So let's talk about what this would cost, because I think that's the portion of this that a lot of people weighing in, I don't know that they fully understand. And my example would be, and this is nothing against what they put out, but Bleacher Report put out 5 to 6 different trades for Paul Skenes. And basically all of these trades were each team, were 3 of the top 5 prospects from each of these teams. So let's start with this, and I'll say this with my chest. If anybody disagrees, that's completely fine with me. But that is so far from enough for Paul Skenes in 4.5 years of him. It hurts my heart. Really does. Like
if any of those things that
were available,
online
somebody would have already pulled
were
the trigger.
available, the phone would have already been hung up with a deal signed.
Paul Skenes would be in a different uniform if all it took was 3 of your top 5 prospects from any team in all of baseball. So how do we get to this conclusion? There's not a good trade comparison for what it would be like to trade somebody who is this caliber of superstar on the mound throughout baseball history, in my opinion, or what I should say is recent baseball history, in order to give us a good baseline. The only option you have to a superstar getting traded with more than 1.5 or a half year is Juan Soto. What did the Nationals get for Juan Soto? Yeah, it's on display right now at the Major League level, but let's look at it in terms of what they got when the trade was made in 2022. They got 2 former number 1 overall Padres prospects who had already been playing Major League Baseball and were past rookie minimums, Mackenzie Gore and CJ Abram. I believe Gore was 24 at the time. I believe Abrams was 22 or 23. So we are talking about 2 very young players who have already passed that service time number. However, they're still top prospects in some way, shape, or form, already performing at the big league level. Then they got 2 top 5 prospects in Robert Hassel III, who was the number 1 Padres prospect at the time, and very well known now, James Wood, who at the time worked his way up the board throughout the first portion of the year to the number 3 prospect in the Padres system. Who is the guy smacked between them? Yeah, you guessed it, Jackson Merrill did not come over in the trade. Finally, the Nats also added Jarlin Susana, who at the time was a top 15 prospect for the San Diego Padres. Regardless of prospect rankings, let's use this as a format. 2 young major leaguers who have already proven themselves in some way, shape, or form, 2 top 5 prospects, and 1 prospect within your top 15. Who's going to pay that right now and who can? And it's the answer truly is like 2, maybe 3 teams, and they're not going to want to give this up. I mean, the first one we can talk about if we really want to is the Red Sox, but I don't understand why you would give up multiple pieces of this really great big 3 core that you have in order to bring in 1 starting pitcher that at the current moment, because you need some of these big 3 pieces to fill holes offensively and holes that are needed to be filled long term to get him, doesn't make sense because Paul Skenes doesn't put the Red Sox over the top right now.
I also don't know that I go back and forth on this. There are guys in this league that it's really hard to ever say a team wouldn't need them.
Sure.
Paul Skenes is so good that anybody who could get him would benefit from having him.
Of course.
But when you look at the Red Sox rotation, even right now, that is not their problem.
No.
Right? Like they are throwing the ball pretty well for even having guys like Cutter Crawford, Tanner Houck, Rich Fitz on the IL. Right? You're in a position where you're missing guys and you're still throwing the ball pretty well between Walker Buehler, Hunter Dobbins, Lucas Giolito, Garrett Crochet. Like, you go do that now in this year, what's the benefit there, and what are you losing? And more than likely, you're losing guys that are a part of the big 3, that are extremely versatile, really long-term, help your window stay open for a longer period of time, or you're giving up major league ready talent or major league talent that is currently somewhat producing for you.
Yeah, we've talked.
Which
one of the big
short
pieces to talk
moment.
about this too is there is a level of which, regardless of being able to afford Paul Skenes in this scenario, because you do have the pieces, what does it do to your window as a major league team? And if acquiring Paul Skenes does not lengthen your window or hurts your window, there's just no reason to do it. From where we stand, you are very right. You are low likelihood you're signing this guy to an extension. It's just the truth. He's similar to the way Juan Soto rolled into free agency. As long as he, knock on wood, stays healthy, he will go into free agency as the best pitcher to ever go into free agency. It's going to happen, right? When you talk about guys who should bet on themselves, like it or not, Paul Skenes is a guy who is in a position to bet on himself with no real questions asked. He's one of the few guys in Major League Baseball who signed an extension right now, doesn't do him anything, right?
And
if he can stay healthy.
It's hard for pitchers to bet on themselves, right? Realistically, it is, because injuries happen and you want to guarantee your cash as early as possible so that if injuries do happen, you're not setting yourself back long term. But from what we've seen of Paul Skenes and from what we know his historical background is from an arm conditioning perspective, the stuff he's already doing to get there, guys of his similar stature longer term, they haven't been short to get the dollars.
Right.
And so he's in an advantageous position physically to be the guy that could get himself in the next 4.5 years to that place. The fascinating thing that I think about also is there are teams that maybe were in a better position to trade for him had they not made other moves this offseason.
Of course.
I think about teams like the Cubs and what the Cubs gave away to get a guy like Kyle Tucker. I think the Cubs were probably in a good position if they wanted to go get him because of where their window is at, because of where the rest of their players are at, where it would have somewhat made sense to add him to a rotation that doesn't have a lot of firepower. But again, you're talking about in division. A lot of times that halts those conversations very quickly.
Yep.
And B, that wasn't the side of baseball that Jed Hoyer really wanted to shift around. Jed Hoyer wanted to add more firepower to the offense, which he did very well, and is the direction he wanted to try and go win baseball games this year. So he went the Kyle Tucker route instead, which I think he gave a ton for as well.
Listen, I'd also argue, though, that the only team in baseball not the only team in baseball, the team in baseball right now who has enough, could afford him still currently, and he would extend their window and is dealing with starting pitching injuries, is the Cubs, right? However, you're right. The Pirates aren't planning on facing Paul Skenes 4 times a year when they trade him. Right. Nor should they, in my opinion. So we're again talking about an in-division trade of Paul Skenes would cost even more. And we already talked about how much Juan Soto cost for 2.5 years, let alone, again, guys, Skenes for 4.5 years. This is unheard of to move a guy this early who is this type of superstar. This doesn't happen.
Well, and the trade that Jackson brought up when we were going through stuff that was, obviously not very recent was the Dontrelle Willis trade from the Marlins to the Tigers.
With Miggy in it.
And Miguel Cabrera was in that. And there were 6 guys who came over from the Tigers back to the Marlins on that trade. But Dontrelle Willis was in the last year of his, 6 years of ownership with the Marlins. They knew they needed to move him because the Marlins forever and always do not sign big extensions to these guys. And Miguel Cabrera was going to be in a very similar situation and honestly hadn't even yet proven himself. He was kind of a skinny left fielder at the time. So when you look at that situation, it's not even comparable. And 6 guys came back for Dontrelle Willis in an earlier time when we hadn't even seen deals like that being made. So trying to even translate that into Paul Skenes that comes with even more time of service available to whoever gets him and the consideration of how good he is in comparison to the league. Yeah. I just don't know that it's a realistic conversation to have. Now, there is the flip side of this where, historically speaking, this is not me speaking poorly on the Pirates ownership or the Pirates general management. Historically speaking, the moves that organization has made don't always make sense.
Yeah.
So
I don't disagree. Listen, I think the main you're right. You're absolutely correct.
Likelihood is we could see something happen and say they did not get enough for him. and we have to live with that.
My concern is simple: is like the price tag should be relatively obvious, and that's easy. Like, we'll give you Skenes and a guy whose contract we want to move. I'll throw out a name here. I don't think they have to do this, but like I could see them pairing a Key Brian Hayes with him in order to get out from under that contract, since I know they haven't been super happy about it. It just
Or
hasn't
Brian
worked
Reynolds.
out. Could be Brian Reynolds, you're right? And we saw Josh Bell move with Soto just because the Padres wanted Josh Bell. Josh Bell made no difference in that trade, guys. They would have gotten the exact same thing for just Soto.
Now he's back.
But hey, I'm not upset about it. I love Josh Bell in our dugout. So where we're going with this is simple. Is we're talking about 6 to 9 players for Paul Skenes, and 2 of those probably under 25 at the major league level, 3 of those probably top 5 prospects in your organization, and then another 3 to 4 guys for shits and giggles. So I just don't, it's hard for me to believe anybody's going to pay that. There's an argument to be made. If for some reason they can get that, yeah, I'm with it. The Pirates should pull the trigger. And the reason why is simple. We're talking about an entire field worth of players. And if you hit on 5 of them, 4 of them,
I was going to say 4 of them.
You are gold, right? But
Let me ask you this question. And this will be the last part of this conversation, because I do want to move on to the next conversation that we're going to have in the next topic. But the only sticky situation that the Pirates are in, and the reality of the situation is, getting him to sign an extension in 3.5 years, within the next 3.5, 4 years, is going to be difficult. Borderline impossible. Unless you start to show a little bit more growth around the rest of the organization that makes him feel like it's a place he wants to grow with. If he goes and pitches lights out for the next 3 years, you're kind of in a weird situation where you got to get something for him, but you're losing a little bit of leverage for what you're actually going to get in value. How do you find that sweet spot as a GM to say, okay, now it's time to trade him? I've still got enough leverage in years to really get a good, like you said, a king's ransom in return, but I'm not necessarily having to lose out on having him as a piece for the next couple of years.
But I think we've seen this. As critical as I can be about Mike Rizzo at time with the Nationals and some of the trades he has made, because some have been really good. The Soto trade was really good. I have nothing poor to say about it. Yeah. He did his job very well, right? I've looked at other trades that he's made, such as the Scherzer and Turner trade, and they're not my favorite now. Regardless of how I feel about those things, I think Rizzo showed us what that blueprint is, and that 2.5 year mark left. So it would be 2027, right? Right when he's halfway through his first arbitration year, probably is the sweet spot. And the
when
reason
you
why
offer him the first extension and he says no,
correct, which is exactly what the Nationals did with Soto, is they gave him a number which at the time was over $400 million and was a fair number at the time, right? Yeah. So you can put yourself out there. You can give an offer that would be fair at the time for Paul Skenes. You give Skenes the opportunity to say yes or no, which is totally his choice. And then you get to go to your fan base and everybody around and say, look, we put out an offer. We understand how you feel about our history of doing this, but we did. And we put our best foot forward. He's not going to re-sign. 2.5 years of service time is something that has a true structure and format around what the deal would need to look like. Now we can go get that, and everybody in the league knows exactly what we're asking for, and there's not really a question of if we're compromising. I think that's where it is. The question really becomes is who needs him at that point in time and what the market looks like, right? You got to look next year. Like, they're doing the right thing in reality of floating him if that's what they're doing, because if you just keep floating him until you get the right deal, there's a high likelihood
the league was going to float him whether they did or not.
No, I know, but my point is him being floated. Whoever engaged the floating is great for the Pirates, right?
Yeah,
because
for sure.
They might not even be the ones who have to set the market, right? Teams are just going to call him and throw shit at the wall and see what happens, because you are correct. Not a single GM is going to go, damn, wouldn't want Paul Skenes on my team.
Right.
Right? Like, every team in the league has probably called and just asked what the King's ransom is, or thrown out an offer that they knew was going to get rejected.
If the Dodgers were shopping Ohtani, every team, including the teams that have a regular DH, would be calling.
The positional fit doesn't matter with a superstar. I mean, nope. I agree with that. Either way, there you go. Paul Skenes probably not getting traded. Probably shouldn't get traded yet,
Well,
specifically
not yet.
because I don't think the Pirates are going to get enough. I think that's where we leave this. He's worth more than people want to admit. And if you think 3 of the top 5 prospects in your organization is enough, if that happens, we'll just disband the show and get off the air.
Well, I don't like that idea. But
I'm
yeah.
kidding. All right.
This is my life.
Let's move into our next topic. There are quite a few high-end prospects that are either raking or shoving right now, and they're making it really difficult for their organization not to put them on the Major League roster. We're going to highlight 4 of those guys today. And listen, let's do some things here. We're going to spit out the names for you guys up front. We're going to talk about Jack Caglione, Roman Anthony, Chase Burns, and Bubba Chandler, speaking of the Pirates. A couple things we want to run through real quick, first and foremost, is we're going to go back to some of these arbitration eligibility things and Super 2s and whatnot, and just a reminder of how this works, because there are a couple guys in here who, if they got brought up right now or over the next couple of weeks, they could be Super 2 eligible. And what does that mean for these players in that team? Super 2 eligibility is dictated each year by the top 22% of players from a service time perspective who have not yet hit 3 years but are close. What this in turn does is basically give the player a 4th arbitration year rather than only 3 arbitration years. If any of these players were to get brought up right now, they are in a window that could create and make them a Super 2. This is generally better for the player than the team, because what a Super 2 designation does for a player is, again, it gets them 1 year earlier the ability to negotiate their salary. So most Major League teams, in reality, would prefer that guys are not Super 2 eligible from a payroll standpoint. Again, I believe the number last year was somewhere around 2 years and 140 days?
134 days?
134 days of service time.
Jackson will let us know.
He will absolutely let us know. He'll tell me how wrong I was, too. Either way, we just want to throw out there that those designations will be talked about a little bit in this conversation. But let's start with CAGs. And holy hell.
Yeah.
I mean,
I said this on Twitter the other day. Like, there are guys who come around every once in a while, and they show us that there is only one level of this game that could potentially corral their abilities and tame their abilities. He is kind of entering that category the way he is swinging the bat.
Very Wyatt Langford-esque from 2 years ago, the way he is just torching minor league pitching. Cags right now, over his stretch in AA and AAA, 42 games, hitting .321, .389, .565, 11 home runs, 48 RBIs, and 8 doubles. Yeah, it's kind of good, or so I've been told.
Yeah, when you're hitting more home runs than doubles, that is piecing the ball up, as they say.
Yeah, and listen, Kansas City is in the mix, right? That is a very, very strong AL Central division. The Twins obviously emerging here recently, playing better baseball like we expected them to. The Guardians being consistent like they are. And then the Tigers are just, again, they're Cerberus at the gate right now. Nobody's getting through without talking to the Tigers at the moment. But the Kansas City Royals could use some pop. And I think that's where this discussion really starts, right? When you look at the Royals at the current moment, from a slugging percentage perspective, they need more extra base threat. Now, let's talk about this in terms of Kansas City. Largest ballpark in all of baseball from an outfield perspective, if I remember correctly. A lot of gap to gap. They don't hit as many home runs at home. However, when you look at what the Royals have done, they're also not slugging well on the road, which is something that tells me maybe Cag's pop could really help them. Salvador Perez getting a little bit older. He is not the home run hitting Salvi we've seen over the last X amount of years. So I think there's precedent maybe to bring him up, but there are quite a few different detractors in how you make this work from a roster construction perspective.
Yeah, it's a fascinating situation because obviously the biggest thing for me here right out of the gate is the PPI. PPI is the prospect promotion incentive. Couldn't get the words out of my mouth. which basically says a guy needs to be brought up by day X, which is already passed, so that his rookie numbers or his rookie achievements for Rookie of the Year voting can actually lead to draft picks for your team. At this point, if Jack Caglione was brought up, went on to win Rookie of the Year, it does not net the Kansas City Royals anything beneficial from a draft capital perspective.
Yep.
So there's a hard thing there because you don't want to not bring a guy up when you're in a position to be successful. You also don't want to lose his rookie status to where he couldn't be beneficial for you in the next year.
Yep.
So you're kind of caught between a rock and a hard place where you could just wait a couple months, bring him up later in the year, let him get some time at the big league level, maybe help you make a push, but in all actuality not give him enough at-bats within that time period to lose that rookie eligibility. You get kind of the best of both worlds. He definitely at that point wouldn't be on the roster long enough to be a Super 2, so you're also not hurting yourself from a cost perspective down the road. But the real conversation here is whether or not he is ready. And that's where you and I might disagree. There's a level of which, like, yeah, take the hot bat. But we also know the biggest adjustment in baseball, the biggest adjustment in sports, is hitting at the AAA level and translating it to the big league level. It just doesn't happen that easily. It's so different. The pitchers at the big league level are better than any pitcher you ever get to see at the AAA level. Because if they were that good at the AAA level, they wouldn't still be there. Hitters at the AAA level can be as good as big league hitters, sometimes even better. But they're there because they're getting more at-bats, they're getting more playing time, they don't fit on a roster. It's very different. And so he's only had 294 at-bats. And while that sounds like a large number, the sample size is not big in terms of baseball.
No.
And so you don't want to bring a guy up really early when your team is in the mix and have him struggle. Because then he's got to go down and do a reset, and you kind of restart the clock of how he works his way back to the big leagues.
I totally agree. And the other thing you're looking at with Cags is, one, in order to make him fit, you're probably moving him off first base. Vinny Pasquantino has been a very, very elite shortstop, elite first baseman for the Kansas City Royals. They also have an elite shortstop.
I was going to say, I think they're good there.
So moving Caglione to the outfield, which they've already started to work on at the minor league level, it's one thing to do it. It's another thing to do it in Kauffman. Again, we talk about how large that field is. He's going to play half of his games there. It can be an absolute adventure out there in Kauffman. I question if that's what they want to do. Additionally, too, there just is no clear spot. They acquired Drew Waters this offseason, and he's gotten an opportunity hitting at a 289 clip right now. It's been nice to see him play ball. Very athletic outfielder who can play all three positions. Unfortunately, because of who they have up there, he would probably be the roster spot for Caglione. He's out of options, which means you allow him to go anywhere, essentially, right? Somebody could take him off waivers when he gets DFA'd. Hard for me to see that making sense right now. Mark Canha as well is on a 1-year deal at the current moment. There's an argument to be made that that contract falls off. You're not going to even look at Canha as an option.
Yeah.
It's just, this is a rock and a hard place for the Royals because I do think they need to add pop to that lineup. The question is starting Cag's service time the right thing to do? My argument right now is that he probably could use more time anyways, and as much as that's not the fun answer, and I'm never here to manipulate people's service time, but like, it doesn't truly probably make sense for them to start his clock at the current moment because it doesn't extend their window the way they need to. I think if you see Cags come up right at the end of August, they'll manage his at-bat numbers in order to keep his rookie eligibility and status. That seems to be the route that I would expect the Royals to go, which is sad for all of us because it means we don't get to see Cags in a big league uniform for another couple months.
A great example, and it's happening right now, of something that I would liken it to and why it may not be the best thing for your team, even though he could come up and do well, is looking at the Nick Kurt situation in with the Athletics. I almost said in Oakland. Tyler Soderstrom was hitting the absolute snot out of the ball, playing first base, very consistent day in and out for him. He totally had to change everything he does day in, day out, because he had to learn left field.
Yep.
And he's playing a fantastic left field defensively for a guy that has not played a lot of left field. He's also just not hitting as well as he was. Part of that is the league adjusts as you adjust, and how well can you continue adjusting to stay hot. The other part of that is if you're not getting the same amount of time to focus on the hitting, you're not going to be as good at it. It's a really hard thing to do. And we talked about this with Jack Wilson last week. When he came up to the big leagues, he stopped focusing on his hitting and he focused a lot on his defense because it needed to get better. The one year that he put way more effort into offense than defense was 2004. And he hit the crap out of the ball, and he actually turned out to be an all-star that year, Silver Slugger, all those things. Vinny Pasquantino is on a 9-game hitting streak. He's really starting to get his, 10-game hitting streak after today.
Yes.
He's really starting to get himself going offensively. So if you tried to make the decision to either A, move him off of first base and have him DH, you shift the way that his day in, day out goes, potentially. And then if you try and move Cags to the outfield, you could be changing the way that he goes about his day when he gets to the ballpark, having to learn a new ballpark in the outfield, learn a new position at a big league level. There's a lot to it rather than just saying, oh, this guy's hitting well, let's just bring him up and stick him in the lineup. It's not often that teams have a plethora of first basemen, but it happens. It's a very unique position to be in, and sometimes it's just something you have to work through.
Yeah, he'll be on the roster here sooner than later, whether any of us like it or not, more than likely. We all know that the bat speaks at the highest level. I think there is another good argument to continue to make sure that he is extremely comfortable in the outfield at a lower level so that you come up and that's not the main focus when he gets there. Let's move on to our next outfielder on this list, and that's the number one prospect in all of baseball, according to MLB.com, Roman Anthony, who through 44 games this season is hitting .323, .455, .513, 6 home runs, 8 doubles, and walking at a 25% clip. Yeah, there's only one guy in baseball that we see do that in any regularity.
Well, they're afraid of him down there.
That's
at
Juan
AAA.
Soto.
I know. Roman Anthony, they're afraid of him down there at AAA right now. I would be too. He hit a ball 117 the other day in the gap that just carried out of the ballpark.
He definitely seems to have his hair on fire now that he's the last of the big three sitting in Worcester? Where they at?
Yeah, Worcester.
Yeah.
Spelled like Worcester, not pronounced like Worcester.
He's definitely not happy to be the last guy down there, and I don't say that negatively because there's an argument that he's the best of the three guys. And that's a scary statement and proposition. So where are you at with Roman Anthony and your thought process of him potentially coming up within the next week to 2 weeks because of the way he's swinging the bat?
It's the same conversation. This is what I brought up when it came to some of the earlier conversation with Paul Skenes as well. It's like there's different ways you treat pitchers and hitters. And with pitchers, it's, come on up, somebody's going to get injured, we'll slot you in and give you your shot, and you can kind of move up and down and pitch at different levels and just kind of keep on a clock. Lineups are constructed very, very specifically 1 through 9 from an offensive perspective and a defensive perspective. There's a world in which, if he hits the ball really well, he absolutely fits. They are missing offensive production in the outfield. Ceddanne Rafaela is not hitting well. He still deals with chasing too many pitches out of the zone. He's got great speed, and he's a great defender. But you know who else has played center field in that ballpark and can play a very good defensive center field in that ballpark? The guy who's playing left in Jarren Duran. Yep. There isn't an issue here where if you move Rafaela out of that position, you can't slot that back in with a solid defense. And in all likelihood, you have a really good platoon in right field with Wilyer Abreu and Rob Refsnyder. You have Jarren Duran in center field. You have Roman Anthony in left. And you have a really, really strong offensive outfield at that point, and also a very strong defensive outfield at that point.
Yes.
With a lot of flexibility. The only and this is where the conversation now becomes, whose spot does he take? And I think it's one of two guys. It's either going to be Rafaela or it's going to be David Hamilton. And really, both of them are the same exact player in my eyes. They can play a ton of positions on the field, at a pretty good level. Their offense isn't fantastic, and they're going to steal you some bases if you put them in a pinch running situation, right? Like they're just kind of your ultimate utility man who then turns into a bench player and gets a start every fifth day.
Yeah, this is a little bit easier of a fit compared
For
to
sure.
Cags. Rafaela, in my opinion, is going to be one of the best utility players in baseball for a long time. I look at Rafaela and I see a very, very athletic, maybe a little bit lighter hitting version of like a Dylan Moore, right? He can go out there every night, play every single position on the field, maybe outside of catcher at a above average level. And depending on where you put him, that level is elite, as we've seen in center field and every outfield position since he's come up. The bigger catch here again is just, man, you started Christian Campbell's clock this year, which they signed him to a long-term deal, so no longer matters. So let's throw that out the window because they did lock down Campbell for the next, he was 8 years. Yep. Plus a ninth-year club, I believe.
Yeah, I believe so.
And then you started Marcelo Meyer's clock last week. Are you willing to also start Roman Anthony's clock? Right?
Most likely early enough to make him a Super 2 designation.
Correct. And again, yes, if he comes up within the next 2 weeks, Anthony's a potential Super 2 and Meyer is a potential Super 2, right?
But we're also verging on a point where if you wait 2 weeks, Roman Anthony is not, and Marcelo Meyer is.
The other piece we're not talking about is these guys have options. It's not like you can't move them up and down in order to change the amount of service time. At the same time, I just do not believe in bringing up a prospect of the caliber of a Meyer, a Campbell, or an Anthony and planning on just sending them up and down.
The only thing with Marcelo Meyer, the only thing with Marcelo Meyer is that it came through injury. It all depends on how long Bregman is out, but then you're starting to talk about who else comes off of that everyday roster when Bregman is back. Right? It could be a Nick Sogard. Nick Sogard's got 3 options. You easily
100%.
could move him and keep Marcelo Meyer. But then at that rate, is Marcelo Meyer playing every day? Probably not. Is it worth having him sit the bench or go back to Worcester and get regular at bats?
I think the catch is though is you'll have Campbell flex to first, Meyer will be playing second, and they'll find a way to get Bregman back in at third, and it'll fit. Because the difference between these 3 prospects and most other prospects is these are 3 guys that we do expect to immediately hit at the big league level, and it's hard to say that. That doesn't happen on a regular basis. But all of these guys have enough minor league service time. We've seen what they've done at a lower level, and regardless of the change at big league camp, all 3 of these guys have a different level of pedigree than we see with most top-end prospects. That's nothing against Caglione and his ability to hit at that level, but we are talking about 3 different players who don't generally struggle as much with the swing and the miss, right? It's just a different profile of hitter. Anthony is a true 5-tool player. Meyer has the ability to be a true 5-tool player. Campbell has the ability to be a true 5-tool player. I think Cags is potentially in that conversation. However, when you look at Cags, you're not sitting there and talking about Caglione's defense. We're talking about how many home runs he's going to hit at the big league level, and we're talking about how many balls he's going to bust into the gap. There's nothing against him. It's just these are different profiled players, and that's how we have to look at this. I hate it because it's service time manipulation, and having that conversation is wrong for the players, and I'm a very player-first person when I look at this, but I don't know how much sense it makes for the Red Sox to bring Anthony up at all this year. If I'm being honest with you, I think he's a September call-up.
I don't think it's a service time manipulation conversation at that point. It's a roster construction conversation.
Sure, no, and I agree with you because you need to
perfectly
extend.
Reasonable, there's perfectly good reasons why you wouldn't do it that lend more to what I would call roster construction and service time manipulation.
Right. Listen, him coming up in September and then being on the opening day roster next year staggers him and Meyer for 1 season. Again, keeping your window a little bit longer. Your other guy that you just signed in Campbell can play all the positions that Meyer can. I'm not saying that's something you focus on, but you are protected from a standpoint of it's not like you don't have other guys who could play the position he plays. Plus, eventually Trevor Story is going to come off of this contract that he's on, which will allow Meyer to shift to short, Campbell back to second, and make room for either another power-hitting first baseman or hopefully a healthy Tristan Casas who's swinging the bat.
The likelihood is that you really want to sign one or two of these three guys. You want to utilize as much as you can within the 6-year window of the guy you don't, and you want to extend two of the three. If it were me, now that you've already extended Christian Campbell, I think Roman Anthony's probably that guy, not Marcelo Meyer, just because Christian Campbell gives you the versatility everywhere, and Roman Anthony's hip profile, for me, is a little bit more of what I'd like, and I think aligns really well with how the outfield is already set up.
Yeah.
But I think what's really difficult about saying that is the timeline of when you have to sign these guys. If you don't start Roman Anthony's clock until next year in some way, shape, or form, you do set yourself up to probably extend 1 or 2 years beyond the 8 that you have for Roman Anthony, because you probably get another 2-year window where you don't even have to extend Roman Anthony. Then you could extend him right before arbitration starts, clear out those arbitration years, another 4 or 5 on the back end, and now you've created a 10 to 15-year window if you put the right pieces around him. Oh, and by the way, you just extended Garrett Crochet through that entire window as well.
Winning cures everything in this scenario, and if the Red Sox can go deep into the playoffs this year, all three of these guys are going to be on that roster in some way, shape, or form, because they'll make sure that Roman Anthony is eligible for that.
Right.
And let me tell you what, if they make any type of run into the playoffs, they will have a shot to keep all three of these guys. Because again, winning cures just about everything in life, believe it or not.
Winning makes guys want to stick around.
Well, and see what's around them, right? We've seen why people are talking about the Orioles needing to extend guys, right? We've talked about the Reds needing to extend guys. Keeping these cores together who not only believe in the team but believe in each other is something.
The Athletics.
The Athletics, you're absolutely right. Something to talk about on a regular basis. Let's keep moving here, as we do have two more guys we wanted to cover. The first one's going to be Chase Burns, who, by golly, is Chase Burns making minor league hitters look not nearly as good as they are. Currently through 8 starts at high A and double A.
Not nearly as bad as they are.
Sorry, there we go. Thank you. At the high A and double A level through 8 starts, 35.2 innings pitched. He's throwing to a tune of a 2.27 ERA, a .869 whip, 13.9 Ks per 9 innings, and only 2.0 walks per 9, which I believe he's actually potentially made another start since then and is a little bit lower now. Let's take a look at that while we're here. At the double A level, I'm sorry, he currently is throwing 1.77 walks per 9 now since we last updated this. So
Good
he's
Lord.
walking even less. Flex, you got to watch this guy in college a lot, as did I. The biggest knock on him, ironically, was his ability to stay consistently in the zone and not leave balls over the plate. The question with Chase Burns has never been stuff. He currently throws a 4-seam fastball, slider, curveball, and changeup. All of them are graded 55 or higher, with the slider being what is considered his best pitch by most scouts. That could be upwards of a 70 out of 80 on the scale. Finding the zone this year, and he's showing us what happens when a guy like this stays around the zone because of how good he is.
Yeah, we went back and forth on what would kind of be the right entry point for him into the big leagues. And I'm sort of the belief, given where the Reds are currently at right now, and if we want to talk about it, because they're in a division that I still think is not out of their reach right now. They're in third. They're one game behind. They're one game back of 500. Chicago's leaning on offense right now. We know how offense goes in the big leagues. It comes and goes. There might be a stretch where the Chicago Cubs don't have a blistering offense. There's also a point at which the Reds could start to get hot. But the thing that they're really struggling with right now is bullpen. Their starters are doing pretty well. Hunter Green, Andrew Abbott, Nick Lodolo, Nick Martinez, and Brady Singer's finding his way. It's a tough ballpark for him, to be quite honest. But their biggest struggle right now is they will be in ball games and have chances to win, and their bullpen is not shutting things down. Chase Burns, when he was at Tennessee, was used out of the bullpen primarily towards the end of his time being there because he was struggling as a starter. Now he went to Wake Forest and did just fine as a starter, but he could get hit around here and there. Now, this is college. He's now doing what he's doing at the professional level, and he's doing it very well. And this is his first time getting into this level of baseball. His first professional innings, I believe, were during spring training this year, because he had just come off of kind of working after being drafted and getting his body ready for pitching into the next season. I don't hate the idea of his entryway into the big leagues this year and probably a little bit down the road being in the bullpen. The plan is still for him to be a starter, but I look at it similarly to a Jackson Jobe situation last year. And Jackson Jobe was in this situation last year because the Tigers put themselves in a position where they needed it. But I would love to kind of see him get to be a short-term bullpen arm in a low-stakes situation where he can get comfortable pitching at the big league level. It's not easy to do, but getting comfort seeing big league hitters going into your first offseason to potentially line yourself up to be on a big league roster in 2026 gives him the visual while he's making that prep into 2026 all that more comfortable. He knows what it's like to be on a big league mound at that point. He knows what big league hitters look like standing in the box. He knows what a big league umpire is going to look for and call. And he gets to work his way into that effort rather than saying, here's my stuff, hope you can hit it. Here I am, big leagues at the start of 2026. Guys have done it. Jared Jones did it very well at the start of 2024, jumping right into the big leagues at the start of the year and not having big league time going into it. But I think giving guys like Chase Burns, who are still working through stuff like continuing to command the ball in the zone in low-stakes situations out of the bullpen, is a great learning opportunity, especially for a team that is still growing and a team that has a manager in place that's helping them grow.
I see the argument. I mean, you know how I feel about this. I would prefer that when he comes up, he is starting, because that's going to be the expectation of Chase Burns for the next X amount of years. I think the bullpen route is a good way to get a guy on a major league mound. It is absolutely what the Reds need right now, is they have a bottom 15 bullpen in all of baseball as a team that is going to be contending in a division that will be somewhat competitive within themselves. Look, their rotation is Green, Lodolo, Singer, Abbott, and Martinez right now. Abbott, since he's come back from injury, is throwing to the tune of something under a 2 ERA, throwing great. Green and Lodolo have looked exactly how you'd expect, and Martinez is just an absolute pro on a regular basis. Got the win again today
against the Royals.
Absolutely, and he looked very comfortable. Rhett Lauder is currently on the IL for them, and Chase Petty, who's another highly touted prospect, has already had 2 starts at the major league level. I agree with you from a team perspective. Sorting out the bullpen for the Reds is the most important thing. We're just sitting in another spot here where I think this is an arm that could potentially get big league innings. I do think Burns is 2 to 3 months away. I do think you're probably right. Contrary to what I believe, he will be used in the bullpen off rip, but I don't expect that to happen until we get closer to the end of July, August, after the break. There is no point in them starting his service clock or bringing him up right now, in my opinion. I don't think it helps them enough yet. However, if they get hot at any point in time over the next 2 months and they know they need bullpen help, that will probably signal when they bring Burns up. I would also pay attention to when Burns ends up in AAA, because in his scenario, I do expect him to get AAA innings before he comes up, because there's no reason for them not to.
Right.
Because he doesn't have to be there right now. So
the likelihood is he's going to move to AAA in the next couple of weeks. If
Correct.
The way he's been pitching in AA, there's just no need to keep him there. You want to keep his progression. The other thing to think about is, like, we're talking about the middle of Ohio in the summer. There's a very real chance that they're stuck with a doubleheader in a really odd situation. And if guys like Rhett Lauder are still in the IL, you could just bring Chase Burns up for a spot start and say, need a guy to throw? This is your slot in the road. This is your timing, and you've already made 8 to 10 starts at AAA by this point. Give it a go.
I just think it's going to be Chase Petty over him, and I don't say that because whether you believe it should be Chase Petty or not is a whole different discussion. However, you've already given Chase Petty 2 starts. It's done under injury pretenses, and he's another guy too who has always been a high stuff guy since he was drafted out of high school. He's been moved twice since he was drafted out of high school. I mean, Chase Petty has stuff. He is another one of those guys, though, when your rotation is this deep, the question is being asked of whether or not we look at his stuff and say, maybe this is a guy that we make a back-end, high-leverage type guy in our bullpen. Because when you get the opportunity to go out there and you're only expected to throw 1-2 innings maximum, it only amplifies the stuff of which these guys already have. And as much as I'd love to see Petty in a rotation, it doesn't necessarily make sense for them right now. Yep. Another great young arm. I mean, the problem that the Reds have, is wonderful. You're telling me you've got Rhett Lauder, Chase Petty, and Chase Burns just hanging out? I mean, I know Lauder's hurt, but it's the point, right? He's on your roster, and he will be back sooner than later. I love where the Reds are. I think we can both agree at the current moment it probably doesn't make sense to bring Burns up regardless of how much he is slashing minor league pitching.
Yeah.
All right, last but not least, as we speed run through it, Bubba Chandler. This is the guy who told Paul Skenes this year, have fun being the opening day starter because it's not going to be you for long. You have to love that out of him because he
that
knows
internal
who
competition.
He is. Oh, it's wonderful. And Skenes has even talked about how much he enjoys it with the young arms they have. Bubba Chandler through 10 starts this year at the AAA level, 43.2 innings, a 2.27 ERA, a 1.08 whip, 61 Ks, and the opponents are hitting 178. Now that 1.08 whip is maybe a little bit deceiving here as we've talked about because Bubba Chandler right now has one glaring weakness, and it's the only one, in my opinion, people should be nitpicking about him, and he struggles to keep the ball in the zone and not walk guys. And talk about, Flax, when you get an opportunity here, a little bit more about how that's going to affect him differently, even with that 178 batting average against at the AAA level.
Yeah. Are you saying that because even I struggle with that in our men's league? This is quite literally. This is like me in our men's league.
It is. It absolutely is.
If I'm in the zone, it's not getting hit a lot, but finding the zone can sometimes be a struggle. In 43.2 innings, Bubba Chandler has walked 20 guys. That's almost
4.12 per 9.
There you go. That was the word I was looking for. And on top of that, he's hit 5 guys. Hitting 5 guys in 10 starts is a lot. That is a ton. Guys don't get hit that often in the major leagues, much less professional baseball. A pitcher that's hitting a guy once every other outing is not good. What's tough for me when I look at Bubba Chandler, a lot of the numbers are very low, and you look at it and say he's dominating. He just threw 6 1/3 of no hit ball at the AAA level. Guys, he also walked 4 guys. That's not good. Hitters at the AAA level are very good. Bubba Chandler's stuff also seems to outmatch them when it is in the zone. They're not big league hitters. There will be 4 to 5 guys in every single big league lineup that he does not overpower. And if he's walking guys in and around those hitters, he will give up more hits. They say in the big leagues, I think it's like you want an opponent's batting average somewhere around like 225, 230. That's good. So you're talking about Bubba Chandler that's going to have an opponent batting average that's going to be almost 50 points higher, 40 points higher at a good level. Yep. Now lay in walks with that. The likelihood that he can get away with it at the next level is very low. This is why teams keep pitchers like this in the minor leagues until they can figure out this command. It might be a pitch mix thing. I haven't dove into it enough to know what he's throwing for strikes more than others. There's also not a lot of places with minor league pitchers to really get that information, to be quite honest. But when I look at him from a situational standpoint, he's just not ready. As good as he's been, I think 1 to 3 more starts where you're letting him stretch out even further than 6 innings gets him to a place where he could actually be beneficial for you at the big league level. And then cutting down the walks, right? We got to get closer to 2 walks a game. Walks are going to happen. You're going to pitch around some better hitters. You're going to nibble corners at certain points in the game when you can. Sometimes guys are just going to take really good at bats. But 4 is very different than 2. 2 is manageable. 2 walks, 6 hits. Generally, you can get away with that, giving up 2 runs over a 6 inning time period, as long as you're keeping the ball in the ballpark. Right? Like That's the reality. And if you could get that from Bubba Chandler in half a season, you'd be pretty happy if you were the Pirates. And so he's just not there yet.
I think Chandler's stuff is elite. And I think, as we say he's not there yet, let's be clear. It's not that he's not close, because he is. I think when you look at a guy with the stuff that Chandler has, it does consistently come down to finding your way into the zone in the right way. We're not asking Chandler to just throw lollipops to people over the middle of the plate. However, finding a way to cut that walk rate down by 1 to 2 walks is going to do him exponential. I mean, listen, guys, it may not change the batting average of which people are hitting against him, but it will certainly change the complexion of a start. The nice piece for the Pirates is, if we're being totally honest, you've started Jones's clock, you've started Skenes' clock. He's already staggered 1 year at least from this group of players. The big thing for me on Chandler is, I think you go 1 to 5 more starts. You work on the minor adjustments he may need to make in order to get that walk rate down a little bit, and then you bring him up. Now, as the Pirates, you're no longer in jeopardy of him being a Super 2. You get Major League innings from Bubba Chandler this year, and potentially another boost to your pitching staff. You also might have him pitching in low-leverage games, because we don't know what the Pirates' record's going to look like in the next 5 weeks. He's another case of a guy who, from a numbers perspective, he's definitely earned an opportunity, but there are some minor things of which could be nitpicked. And right now, you don't have to have him up. So there's no reason not to work on those things a little bit before you bring him up. His service time, starting his service time clock doesn't affect you because you've staggered him well already. I'd expect to see Chandler in a Pirates uniform before the end of the year, but I think we're at least 5 to 6 weeks away before that happens.
Well, and we talked about this, and the conversation also holds true for a guy like Chase Burns. The other thing that you tend to notice the higher you get, and there are guys that get away with not being this way, but the higher you get, guys take more professional at-bats. The eye of the hitter gets exponentially better every level you go to, right? Chase Burns going from single A to double A, and his numbers on can he keep it around the zone are getting better partially because his stuff is so electric that if he's right around it, he's going to get a lot of swings and misses. Bubba Chandler having this many walks, considering how electric his stuff is, tells me, A, the AAA level has a lot of professional hitters who've been doing it for a long time, because that's generally what AAA is, and are waiting him out to force the ball over the plate. Now, they're still not doing anything with it when he is putting the ball over the plate, but for the most part, they are getting on base and forcing him into the zone. And again, I say, at the big league level, if you're facing a hitter like Aaron Judge, and he is absolutely on the high end of that scale, but if you're facing a guy like Aaron Judge, or give me a Ryan McMahon, who again, very copy-paste guy for the last 5 years, if you don't throw the ball in the zone to him, and he gets ahead of you, and you throw a pitch, not a fastball, a pitch, when he's ahead in the count over the plate, he will demolish it. Guys at AAA are a lot of times there because they don't take advantage of those opportunities nearly as well as the guys in the big leagues. That's a big reason why hitters get to an elite level or they don't, is taking advantage of the opportunities that they have to hit the pitches that are thrown to them. If you're a pitcher on that other side and you're giving too many opportunities because you can't establish other things in the zone and you're putting guys on base for free, you will get hit around.
Yeah,
it will elevate that issue.
And we are finally moving towards an era where people are remembering that stuff is not everything. People are remembering that stuff at times hurts longevity and the ability to go deeper in games. Chandler being able to have more than one start at the minor league level that is over 6 innings is probably smart. Let's stretch the guy out. Let's prepare him for more than what we're going to ask him for, even if only asking him for 5 is what you're looking to do. It still puts him in a space where he's probably going to be healthier from an overall perspective if he's prepared to throw more pitches. So I like Chandler a lot. Forcing fastball, slider, changeup, curveball, similar to Burns. He has all the stuff in the world, and I am very excited to see him get to the major league level and get a better look at what his analytics are from a stuff perspective and potentially get to come back and have another conversation on what he does and how he does it. As you stated earlier, it is so hard to find really good data on minor league pitchers from an overall perspective, so it will be fun to finally get to see his metrics.
One more thing I'll say, and this is just like a great example of how people adjust and how hitters are starting to adjust within the league. Mason Miller last year could throw a fastball anywhere he wanted. Correct. It was not getting touched. Max Kepler, who missed most of last season, saw 103 on the inner half and turned it around for an absolute demolished home run. The first time he had ever seen Mason Miller.
Wasn't even a bad pitch.
No. Guys are getting more comfortable seeing the elite stuff, so the need to be really in command of said stuff is starting to become more of a premium. And again, it goes in circles. As hitters get better, pitchers find ways to make it harder to see the stuff and more ways to deceive the hitters into understanding what they're seeing. But hitters are on the upswing right now, and pitchers are going to have to work through better sequencing, better pitch selection when they throw, where they throw it, before they start moving on their upswing. And that's the natural, selection of baseball, if you will.
I agree. And this is a good lead into Darwinism. What my final thoughts are. And this is where I remind people that there's 14-year-olds throwing 92 nowadays. Disgusting. Okay? When Flax and I were 14, we weren't awful players and we played on some decent travel teams. The guys who were throwing the hardest were throwing like 81 to 82. Like, that is legit at 14. Let's just keep this in mind. Velo is going to stop affecting hitters unless it continues to rise because they're seeing it so often. The amount of guys throwing triple digits at the major and minor league levels is wild. And you have to remember, too, there is a plethora of guys at the minor league levels who are throwing upper 90s and into the hundreds. A lot of them just don't know where the ball's going. And I don't mean that in a negative way. It's throwing 100 and controlling 100 are two totally different things. However, we're watching velo across every level of baseball, even the youth levels, skyrocket. And in the words of Tarek Skubal, when we go onto the backfields, everybody on this team hits the crap out of me. Why? Because they get to see him all the time. They get to see his stuff. The more people can pitch shape in the offseason, the more times players are seeing 100+ miles an hour, it is going to just become a little bit more normal. And we are seeing that across all of baseball. So if there's one thing that I can ask of people, it's yes, you need to chase velo to a point, and you need to chase stuff to a point, because right now that's the only way to really get some eyeballs on you. But if you can't control that velo, it's not going to end up mattering. It's only going to get you so far. So we're in a weird spot. Flax, final thoughts on your end?
Final thoughts on my end. I'm flipping back around to it. Go Big Red.
Go.
Go Big Red. Big weekend for the boys. Let's go win a World Series.
Yes, make sure you guys are on the Denison train as well. And if you're not, I'm sure you have a good reason. But we are definitely Big Red fans together this upcoming week. Past that, as always, guys, we hope you enjoyed the content to get today. Can't even speak. Like, follow, subscribe. You can listen to us anywhere you enjoy listening to podcasts, whether that be Spotify, Apple, or YouTube. We will be back next week with our live shows on Sundays. We decided with Memorial Day weekend, it was not a good time for us to do it, and logistically not great, especially when ETSU won the SoCon tournament, and our boy Jackson was having a good evening, hopefully. But either way, let's move on to your favorite segment of the show, which is Jackson probably roasting me, maybe roasting Evan, about all the things that we did wrong. Jackson, how did we do today?
All right, so boys had a pretty good week this week. Only 2 mistakes. One of them was a combined mistake, though, so y'all both got a tally for that.
That's right. Wasn't just me.
So first off, though,
I guarantee you started it, and I layered on top with the incorrect correction.
Look at Jackson's laugh. You already know you're right. Go ahead, Jackson.
So first off was Flax talking about the Miguel Cabrera trade. You said he was a somewhat inexperienced player at the time. He was 5 years into his career, 18.3 WAR, 138 home runs, 3 All-Stars, and 2 top 5 MVP finishes when he got traded.
Sure. Okay. So
Turns out he wasn't the young, skinny guy you thought.
To be fair, though, for as long as his career lasted, he was pretty young into his career.
He was young. The inexperience part's questionable there.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
And the other mistake, y'all called it out in the video, talking about the Super 2 eligibility. I believe Ryan said it was 2 years, 140 days. Flack said 134 days. It was 132 days.
We were close. To be fair, that's
we were
really
getting
good
that
ballpark.
wrong. I knew we were getting that wrong, though. No
close.
question in my mind.
That's all we had this week, though. That is all we had this week.
That's pretty good. I'm pretty happy about
Pretty
that.
good.
So that's 2 tallies for both of us?
No
blood.
Two
Flack,
tallies
one
for
Ryan.
you,
Yeah.
one for me. I didn't get the Miguel Cabrera one wrong.
Yeah, you're right.
Either way, before we do this, Jackson, before we roll this out, finish this episode, tell us about your ETSU squad and what's going down. We wanted to give you some time to talk about your boys.
We just won the SoCon ship. First time we've won the SoCon ship. 5th time going to regional, going to Vanderbilt regional in Nashville, which is where I'm from. So very excited to go home and be part of that. It was an awesome season. It's been fun, but we're not done playing ball yet. They haven't told us to go home yet, so we're not going home.
Yeah, baby. Not done yet.
Love it, man. We'll be rooting hard for you guys. Again, great job with all the work you did this season with that team from a Dana perspective. The coaching staff is obviously excellent over there at ETSU, and the guys have been playing an elite level of baseball. We appreciate you making sure that we know what we're talking about on a weekly basis here. Can we get that final update on the tally, even though I know I'm still losing?
Ryan is at 7, Flack's at 5, and I still have my 1.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, you do, Jackson. I'm more worried about Jackson's 1. He's on his way. Don't you worry. Past that, thank you so much as always for listening. We hope everybody has a great week.